regular meeting of the Bath Local School District, Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Roll call.
Mrs. Ernest?
Here.
Mrs. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Kennedy? Here. Mr. Leidy? Here. Mr. White? Here.
Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First up is recognition of students and staff. Mr. Estes?
Hey, it's my pleasure to introduce the swim team and Coach Rex this evening. If you all want to come forward and face our audience, we'd like to. It's not a firing squad, it's just, it might feel like it, but you know, if you have enough of these experiences in life, then you get used to it. I'm still waiting to get used to it. But anyway, why don't you tell us who you are, what grade you're in, and a little bit about your season.
I'm Espen Reichsel. I'm a senior, and
What'd you like most about swimming this year?
probably like the fun days we had.
Okay.
Yeah. We played water polo.
Okay. That sounds like fun.
So if we need
I'm
a water
proud
polo
of
team, we can start that too.
Caleb Bridges. I'm a senior. It's my first year swimming. It was fun. I did breaststroke.
And he said if he could have gone back and started his freshman year again, he'd started swimming at least that early, maybe even earlier, right?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a senior and I've been doing swim for 4 years. I will say that this has been my favorite season out of all 4 years that I've done swim. I don't know, it just was really enjoyable and everybody on the team was really great this year.
Hi, I'm Kyla. It's also my 4th year. I'd say it was also my favorite year. I was a little scared when I showed up the first day and 5 random senior guys were there for the first time, and I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go, but luckily it went okay. And it turned out to be a really good season. We might not have gone to state, but I think we made a lot of memories and we practiced hard and we had fun, and I think that's more important.
Okay. Coach, would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, no, I think it was also one of my favorites in terms, I try not to pick teams, but this was a really good group. We doubled the size of the team from last year. A lot of thanks to these boys that were on the team, and we got some new girls as well. And overall, like we said, I mean, a lot of it was just trying to set personal goals for themselves and trying to better themselves individually. And you know, I look at a lot of these people, whether they've been on the team for 4 years or started out new, and it was really great just seeing everyone come together and really just drop time and make good memories. And it sounds like that objective was really met this year, and I was really pleased.
Good. Well, and this is one of those things that you do for a lifetime now, right? I mean, you found out you enjoy it, so it's something like golf and tennis that you can continue through the rest of your life. Well, congratulations. I want to thank each one of you for coming this evening. And we always give, when I remember, everybody an early out so you don't have to hang around, see what the grown-ups are talking about. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
You may go.
Okay. Next on the agenda is board responses to previous communications, and we have none. Next is hearing of the public items on the agenda. We have none of those either. So next on the agenda is items from board president, student achievement liaison. Mrs. Kelly?
Yes, so out of the elementary, I received 87 names of students that have been recognized as good citizens. I'm not gonna read all of them, but I'll share the list with the board. And then we also had about 15 Wildcat Way winners. Again, I'll share them with the board. So congratulations to all of the good citizens and Wildcat Way winners coming out of the elementary. With the middle school, Mr. Staley would like to say that their district recently conducted a school-wide spelling bee and congratulations to Caleb Blackson in grade 7 on winning the spelling bee. Caleb will represent our district in the upcoming county and regional meets. Knox Opperman, grade 7, and Peyton Oliver, grade 6, were first and second runners-up respectively. And then Wildcat Way winners coming out of the middle school January winners were Eli Benzman, Addie Corsaro, Dakota Arn, Demi Herod, Ledden Sawyer, and Lou Gonzalez. Congratulations to all those students. Out of the high school, Mr. Jusko would like to share that senior Haley Hinkle was announced as a finalist in the 2025 National Merit Scholarship Program. Over 1.3 million students from nearly 21,000 high schools entered the program. Haley is one of approximately 15,000 students in the country to be considered for National Merit Scholarship Awards. And approximately 7,000 students will be selected as Merit Scholarship winners nationwide. Haley is the 13th National Merit finalist in school history. Congratulations. Each quarter, the high school draws one student from each grade level who have been recognized by staff members for demonstrating characteristics of the Wildcat Way. Several students were nominated, but we are recognizing the second quarter Wildcat winners as freshman Honesty Spivey, okay, thank you for that correction. Zined Khan, Liam Sullivan, and Oscar Webb. Senior Hale Hensley was nominated as Bath School's recipient of the Optimist Youth Appreciation Award. This recognition goes to a senior who has shown positive leadership, good citizenship, and active volunteerism, as well as serving as a positive role model for others. Congratulations, Hale. In addition, we would like to recognize senior Olivia Compton and freshman Emery Breland for taking time after home basketball games to assist with cleaning up the student section. And finally, we'd like to congratulate senior Bradley Everly for scoring his first career basket in our final regular season basketball game last Friday. Well-deserved, Bradley. Thank you. And that concludes recognitions.
Okay. Next on the agenda is administrator's report.
So I don't have much to report, but I'll give you our free and reduced numbers and our current employment situation. So as of today, we have 675 students from BAP and the ESE that are qualified to receive free breakfast and lunch. 123 students that are qualified for reduced, and then 922 that are full pay students. So roughly 46% of our students receive free or reduced breakfast and lunch. Currently, I have a 4-hour position that is available as of today, that we just posted today. So we have that one, that's just gonna go in internally for 5 days and then out to the public if I can't fill it. And then I have 6 subs and 1 contracted floating position that has worked out very well for me and keeping up with my absences, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is items from the superintendent.
First thing we'll talk about tonight is the entrance projects. We're moving right along with those and hoping to meet the March 7th deadline. Actually, we thought we were way behind until our meeting last Tuesday, and got some good news that they're close. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on March 7th, but you know, with any reconstruction project, you never know what you're gonna get into and what hurdles you'll face. So we're real pleased that it's where it's at now. The CAT team, the Community Action Team, had its first meeting on Monday, January 22nd. There were 27 community members, 6 staff members, 3 representatives from Garmin Miller, and Joel and I were present that evening. It was a very good meeting, a lot of good questions. Basically kind of laying the groundwork for where we'll go from here. Just a brief discussion about if we went on the ballot, when would it be? It would be probably in the spring of next year, spring of 26. Don't know what we're looking at, whether it's a 6 through 12 building or a middle school or a high school. That's just gonna require further discussion, but
nice having the community members in here and the staff members that were also present. Give us a good feel about the whole process and the idea that we do want to see input from the community. And that's it.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. The next meeting is Monday, March 24th at 7 o'clock, probably in here, just depends on where we get. You know, if we're in the middle of one of our CTE projects, we might have to find another space. Thank you.
All right, next is additions to the agenda action items. Okay.
So it should be cleanly adopted next action.
All right, so the next agenda item is adoption of the agenda and action items. Do we have a motion?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. White, seconded by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Lighty?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Ernst?
Yes. Okay, next is superintendent consent agenda.
Okay. Item A, recommendation for employment/resignation. The board reserves the right to treat any offer of employment as withdrawn if the contract is not signed and returned within 10 business days of mailing. All employment is contingent upon proper certification and paperwork required for the position. All bus drivers have met all federal CDL ODE requirements for certification. All salaries per annual salary notice commensurate with degree and experience. Item 1, certified staff, certified retirement resignation for 24-25. Susan Dickreedy, teacher, resignation for the purpose of retirement, effective June 1st, 2025. Betty Wiedenbein, teacher, resignation for purpose of retirement, effective August 1st, 2025. Item B, certified stipend payment, approved paying teachers per the attached list for qualifying stipend as defined by the Department of Education and Workforce for completing the Science of Reading and Professional Development course. Item C, certified supplemental employment. Laura Hartzler, musical assistant, level 2, 4.5%. Frankie Russell, strength and conditioning, spring, level 2%. Level 2, 4%. Item D, certified substitute. Certified substitute approved by the Allen County ESC. Substitute nurse approved, current sub-teacher rate of pay, Janet Monday. Certified spring placements of student teachers. A, Ohio Northern, Drew Baker, field experience placement at the middle school. Pablo Frontera Mendez, 20-hour observation at the high school. Lauren Wolters, field experience placement at the middle school. Item 3, classified staff. A, classified resignation. Bobby Cottrell, Foods and Service, resignation effective February 18th, 2025. Brady Hipsher, Assistant to Treasurer, resignation effective March 31st, 2025. I thought we were gonna take that off.
We're supposed to.
We'd like to. You know, since I arrived, you know, Brady's been part of our central office staff, and while it's good for him, we'll miss having him around. Item B, classified employment. Amanda Alger, library assistant, 1 year. Year 1, 7 hours a day, $17.73 per hour. Item C, classified substitute employment. Substitute teachers, aides, and library assistants approved by the Allen County ESC superintendent. Substitute bus drivers approved for 2482 run. Nicole King, substitute clinic aide approved at $17.82 an hour, Janet Monday. Outside employment, Alice Basinger, musical accompanist, level 1, 4%. Sabrina Klein, softball assistant JV, level 2, 8%. Volunteer coaches, this list is included for liability insurance purposes. All volunteer coaches are contingent upon proper certification and paperwork required by the ODE for volunteer coaches. Britton Hall, volunteer tennis, boys. Olivia Foster, volunteer softball.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion?
Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Lighty?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Ernest?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is treasurer's report. Over 20 slides.
All right, we trimmed it down to a really light 24. And actually, there's a slide at the end that's going to kind of reference a couple donations. One of them, I think Kristen's got a little more information on. Do you want to start with that, just so I don't like slide over it, and I'll let you speak loudly first, and just so you can kind of let them know what that donation's about.
All right, well, I can't talk. Okay. So I'm gonna read this. Jim Andrews is at 1969. I don't know, maybe you should read it. I literally lost my voice the last 2 hours.
Jim Andrews is a 1969 graduate of Bath High School. He recently reached out to me, Kristen, about wanting to pay forward because of his experience at Bath. Jim moved here from Michigan and only spent 1 year at our school. He was a 6'11" basketball player that averaged 33 points per game. He earned a scholarship to Kentucky and was recently inducted into the University of Kentucky Hall of Fame. He played for the Indiana Pacers. Because Jim grew up poor, he knows the benefits of his education, athletics, and nutrition. So he has generously donated $10,000 to Bath Athletics and asked for me, Kristen, to use it as I see beneficial. He also requested that the money be donated in honor of Marjorie Kirikoff, who was a nurse in the Bath School District for many years. The donated money will be used for team meals, fueling stations, and adequate dinners for our student athletes.
Yeah, I just think, those types of donations, just, it all matters, it all helps, and there's a couple other ones that I'll highlight at the end, but I thought we'd kind of start with that, because that's fantastic that, remembering his high school. And,
Yeah.
okay, back to the book.
Can you tell them what he did with the test?
Yes,
So there's another part to this.
yeah, so because his daughter,
Talking about the same guy.
yeah, same guy, his daughter, was deaf or had hearing disability, he offered if there was any student in our district, whether special ed or not, who required certain devices to help them, that he would be willing to pay for those, to help support that family in getting that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And she's passed away.
yeah, she's passed away, so it's kind of like an honor for her.
Thank you. No, that's good. Good stuff. Okay. All right, now we're gonna try to speed through the light stuff, because I've got the slides at the back are really what I wanna talk about today. Activity July 1 through January 31, 25. Tax settlement stuff hasn't come in yet, so it's gonna look a little better next month when we get some of that February tax settlement money in. Revenue at 10.2, expenses 12.9, net loss of 2.6. Like I said, that'll look a little better next month with the tax money coming in. January 31 balance of 13.8. Again, kind of that breakdown, revenue, again, on the real estate's at 3 million, state aid's just over 5 million, as the pieces of that 10.2. Expense side, we've got basically salaries of 7, retirement insurance just over 2 million, purchase service at 2.6. Again, that would reflect some of the repairs that we've had going on this year. Revenue side, as far as getting a picture of, right now that state share with the blue looks a little bigger than what it will, again, next month when we get the tax settlement. That'll reshape a little bit. Expense side, again, salaries and wages in the blue, benefits in the orange, kind of give you the picture of the salary and the benefit, again, as it shapes up in the pie chart. Kind of typical of where we're at. Cash balance, again, that reflection of over time, where this January 31 balance has been. Last year we were at 15, 23 we're at 14.5, 14.5 million, and then down to 21 we're at 13.2 million. Again, kind of that ebb and flow again of the cash balance. Like I said, next month we'll have the tax settlement come in, so that'll bump it up and kind of get us on track for the second half of the year. Investments, again, still doing strong as far as the interest rate. Star Ohio, 6.8 million. The SJS investments at 7.5. Again, still clipping well over 4.5% interest. So again, it's kind of it's still in a good spot. Food service, July 1 to January 31. Federal revenues 221,000. The local piece would be 200,000. Expenses 683,000. So net loss of 258. Ending balance January 31 is 724,000. Again, not a bad spot knowing they did that serving line of 138,000. Athletic fund, about boys basketball, we're at 22,004. Girls basketball, 14,006. Again, I always think it's interesting to look, those two compared to football. Football, 42,000. So we'll see where they shake out. But again, I think it's always interesting to see how, those top three are usually the highest numbers for the sports revenue. End of this month, expenses 146,000. So ending balance in the athletic fund, just 88,000. That'd be 769. Got an extra 6 in there. Expenses in the general fund side, just over 300,000. Again, let you know where the spending's at on the athletic in the athletic world. Fair school funding plan. Again, I touched on this last month, and I want to hit it again. Just it seems like a lot of it in the news about the funding, and will this move forward? And it just seems like there's still a lot going on as we get into this budget cycle. And I do think it's important to remember that this was a kind of a 3-year process and it was bipartisan. Trying to figure out involving some of the top policy experts, tax experts, to try to really put together the mechanics of something that could move forward that would be consistent in school funding. But I think right now we're still seeing this political football back and forth a little bit about are we going to fully fund it? Are we not going to fully fund it? But I'm going to talk about some of the mechanics as it relates to Bath here moving forward. Concerns. The biggest concerns in the state budget as related to that formula is that when they're looking at some of the cost inputs, meaning what we're spending for teachers, administration, special ed, everything that goes into the education process, the biggest concern is if they're going to look at fiscal year 22 data, cost data. Well, that's really not a fair way of putting your formula together, because most items don't cost what they did in 22. Whether it's inflation on healthcare, inflation on supplies, inflation on salaries, inflation on everything. So to me, that's the biggest thing, that, okay, we're still going to use the formula, but we're not using right data. So that's problematic. And I think that's the, but the other piece that they're going to update to current data is property values and income. So they're going to use the current data for those items, which means the state will pay less, locals will pay more. And so again, I think that's going to be the rub of where we're at on this political football thing of, we're going to use 22 expense data. It's not going to work. And I think, Mr. Estes and I were looking at reports, both of us kind of at the same time, that I think the traditional public schools in this budget may take a decrease in total. Some may go up, some may go down. It's going to be that game of, did your valuation jump so high that means you're getting less in state aid? So in total, public schools could very well see a decrease in funding in this budget cycle. So again, I think there's more to come on that piece. You know, and again, I want to talk a little bit about, we talked about the valuation here going from 333 million to 394 million. You know, that's a bump in the valuation, which is, it's positive, it's a good thing. But again, it's probably going to limit our growth in state money because they're going to say you're wealthier as a district. And I want to point out some comparisons in the county just to give you a feel for how the money shakes out from the state, and try to do a better job of explaining that. Simulations. I think this slide I was trying to look at for Bath, for example, as that valuation goes up, that state share is going to change. So in 25, our state share was 46.9%. So again, as the valuation goes up, the state share is going to go down. 26, they're projecting our state share at 42.7. Fiscal year 27, 39.3. So I got a hunch that's probably an historic number to say that, you know, for Bath schools, the state share is going to, you know, it may have been 50% at one time. Now the state share is going to be at 39.3%. Simulations, again, they're rough numbers. Again, Mr. Estes and I were looking at them. You know, we've got kind of a slight growth in 26 and 27. You know, 200,000, 207 year one, 227 year two. It's better than going backwards. And, you know, maybe not perfect, but it's better than going backwards because some of the districts went backwards. You know, I'm not showing a negative $600,000 figure in that spot. Cup report, I'm going to expand on this. Again, the expense per pupil in the cup report, state average 16,310. Bath local schools 12,977. I'm going to expand on that number, talk a little bit more about it. Same thing with the administrative expense per pupil. State average 2,200. Bath, we're well below that, 1,581. Again, I'm going to expand on both those numbers. And I know this isn't great to read, so I'm going to highlight a couple things. This is on the expense per pupil, just to give you a range on the 20 schools that are most like us. You know, we always, a lot of different things, we'll talk about the schools most like us and, you know, just see how we shake out, because they're going to have a lot of the, what do I say, the economic data will be similar, and enrollment will be similar, demographic data will be similar. So it's, you know, plugging us in, what was it, 12,977? Yeah, that's miserable to read. But again, you know, we're in that lower third when I look at us, when I look at Bath. You know, at the top, you've got Vermilion, you know, $17,459 per student per year they're spending. And then I also like to throw the report card stuff up there just to kind of throw that, you know, Vermilion's at 4 stars. You know, at the bottom, West Muskingum, $10,798 per student per year, 3.5 stars. But again, I look, you know, Bath is in this lower, you know, this lower third, and again, I think it's, you know, Bath is in a good spot. We're doing well academically. You know, we're not spending at this level, 16,000, 15,000. Again, we're just under 13,000, so I think that's good data to share as far as being, I think, efficient with what we're spending. And getting good results. Obviously, we want to get, you know, we want to see 4, 4.5, 5, but I think we're heading in the right direction. Same with administrative expense per pupil. At the top of this list, again, the 20 schools most like Bath. Swanton is at 2249. Again, I track Bath. That's terrible. 1581. At the bottom, St. Mary's at 1302. So again, I think, you know, we're in that range of that bottom third spending. I don't think we're overspending in this area. So again, I think it's good data to look at. Residential tax rate. You know, again, as Mr. Estes talked about, you know, the CAT team getting together, and I think there are a couple slides in here that it's gonna, information that we'll put together and use later as we talk about potential for a levy and what that looks like. And again, there's a lot of data that I've got here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, the current residential tax rate when we look at, for Bath, for example, inside millage, which is assigned by law, 6.15 mils. Some of the old current expense levy going back to 1976, 12.85 mils, that's continuing. There's two PI levies that are currently, the rate on those is 0.4 and 1.6. That's going back to 1987, 1997. Those are going to be the two levies. I think, Mr. Kennedy, you asked about what's the next levy coming. Those two would have to be on the ballot either in the fall of 26 or 27. Those two PI levies, because they're for 5 years, they need to be renewed. And again, those two PI levies are going to go for the permanent improvements, permanent repairs, usually things that are going to last longer than 5 years. So that would be the next thing coming when we look at the levy cycles. That emergency substitute levy passed in 23, 9.45, that's continuing. The bond issue going back to 12. Currently at 2.74 mils, and that was on for 37 years. Our total is 32.431. And again, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about how that stacks up, for example, in the county, and some of the differences. And there's a lot of different moving parts to the schools because we're all a little bit different. And I want to touch on kind of some of the extremes and kind of describe where that fits in. So, taking that number, the millage that we're currently residential rate, and kind of comparing it across the board. And also going back to that expense per pupil, because I think it is interesting to look at. And I've also added that state share to really put a lot of data on this one slide. In my extremes, for example, maybe I can put Mr. Estes on the spot. From a property perspective, which district, don't look, which district in Allen County do you think I would deem being the wealthiest on a property basis?
Probably Shawnee.
Close, but no. Really close, but no. That number surprised me. Delphus. I thought that was, that's not who I would have predicted. I would have said Shawnee. All right. But it's interesting, and I'm saying that because when I look at the state share, the state share is at 22.8, moving to 13.6. State share in Delphus. Shawnee's number is at 24.7, moving to 15.4. Again, that shocks me, but it's going to be the valuation per pupil. And I think it's interesting to look at the millage. Shawnee's at 32 mils. Delphus is at 20, but I do believe they have an income tax with that. A couple of these districts, like Spencerville, I know they have an income tax. Their millage is 22.9, they have an income tax. So in addition to that, they're spending 13.2. Delphus 13.1, Bath 12.9, Shawnee's 13.5. But again, I thought that was interesting. Looking at the other extreme, looking at Lima. You're thinking 27.41 mils. Seems reasonable. It seems like a reasonable number. They're spending $20,226 per student per year. Again, they're going to have probably a lot different population of Title I, special ed, services. It's just they've got a different population to serve. And their numbers, state percent, 78.7, 76.2. And like I said, our number at 46.9 going to 39.3. on that state share, again, it's just, some of the data is kind of interesting to look at. I look at Perry, 26.5 mils, they're spending 14.5, 62, moving to 57.8, state funded, state share. So again, that state share number tells me that, you know, Delphus being on the list to get money for buildings is probably gonna be a while. Shawnee's gonna be a while. So again, a lot on that slide, but I think it is interesting because I think that's gonna be a question, you know, what does our current millage look like? And, you know, just what it looks like in the county, and, you know, how some of that data works with the state funding. But anyway, we'll move on. Fast fact, you know, again, on that CAT team, you know, when we talk about construction and we talk about, you know, the piece of history with the elementary, you know, there's a couple facts that I could pull out and take a look at. You know, the bond issue on that elementary was, you know, $25.1 million. The OFCC approved expenditures. Again, this is coming from Garmin Miller, but the number makes sense to me. You know, $20.5 million. Probably district LFIs is probably going to be in that range of $4.5 million, which again probably seems like a realistic number. You know, but the credit piece, when I talk about credit, I'm talking about the actual number of state money coming back to Bath in the future. We're talking $5.9 million, which is going to be 29% of this number, of this $20.5 million. I take 29% of that number, which is OFCC approved. That means in the future, $5.9 million would come back to Bath for another project. You know, the local shares at 71%. You know, and it's pretty amazing to me when you look at and I say great investment, because that number at the elementary, you would never do an elementary today for $25.1 million. It'd probably be more like $40 million. You know, so I think that's a, you know, great building, great investment. But again, I think it's clear, I want to make that clear, that we talk about $5.9 million, that's the cash that will be coming back to Bath in the future. Finance Committee, good meeting recently. Talked about the cash reserve policy, talked about a capital projects fund. Nothing on the agenda tonight, but I would say hopefully by next month, good conversation there. We'll probably follow up with hopefully one of those items in the March meeting. Again, a good list of donors on the docket tonight to approve. The $10,000 that we just talked about. And then Apollo donating a vehicle for SRO. I think, did you test drive that, Mr. Estes?
No, had steering problems, but the siren still works.
Did you try it? Did you try it out?
I did.
So no, you know, and I think just it's exciting, you know, whether it's the Bath Boosters, whether it's P&G, whether it's I think Dave Harsh donated for a Pink Out game. You know, I think all the donations, you know, we're excited about getting. We would like to thank those donors. So again, just to keep you in the loop, and thank Apollo for the vehicle. I think that's a very nice gesture. All right. That's it. Yeah, I think the amounts and rates, that piece would probably been in your packet, and again, highlighted by the one sheet with all the millages as far as what we're looking at for this year.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lighty, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Lighty?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Ernst?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Again, the next item would be the kind of the list of donations that you know, kind of highlighted. And again, we'd like to thank those folks for supporting the district and the students and all involved there.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the donations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Kelly, seconded by Mr. White. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Ernst?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Lighty?
Yes.
Okay, next is treasurer consent agenda.
Yeah, I think the highlights as far as the monthly activity, so I think we should be good to go there.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lighty, seconded by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Ernst?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Lighty?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is superintendent's report.
Okay, item A, the Ohio High School Athletic Association resolution authorizing continued membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association for the 2025-2026 school year. Whereas Bath Local School District, District IRN number 045765 of 2650 Bible Road, Lima, Ohio, Allen County, Ohio, has satisfied all the requirements for membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association, a voluntary, unincorporated association, not-for-profit, and whereas the Board of Education Governing Board and its administration desire for the schools with one or more grades at the 7-12 grade level under their jurisdiction to be voluntary members of the Ohio High School Athletic Association. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education Governing Board that all schools listed on the reverse side of this card do hereby voluntarily renew membership in the OHSAA, and that in doing so, the Constitution, bylaws, general sport-specific regulations, and business rules of the OHSAA are hereby adopted by this board, and as for its own minimum requirements as it pertains to, but not limited to, student eligibility, coaching requirements, administrative responsibility. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the board reserves the right to raise the minimum standards as it deems appropriate for the schools and the students under its jurisdiction. And be it further resolved that the schools under this board's jurisdiction agree to conduct their athletic program in accordance with the Constitution, bylaws, general sport-specific regulations, business rules, interpretations, and decisions of the OHSAA, and cooperate fully and timely with Executive Director's Office of the OHSAA in all matters related to the interscholastic athletic programs of the schools. Furthermore, the schools under this board's specific regulations, business rules, and interpretations and rulings rendered by the Executive Director's Office. The administrative heads of these schools understands that failure to discharge the duty of primary enforcement may result in fines, removal from tournaments, suspension from membership, and or other such penalties as prescribed in bylaw 11.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. White, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Lighty?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Ernst?
Yes.
Item B, Tiffin University, approved College Credit Plus alternate funding structure agreement with Tiffin University for the 2025-2026 school year.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Lighty. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Lighty?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Ernst?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Item C, the high school gymnasium floor. Approve the following resolution to accept the bid to remove the existing high school gymnasium floor and install a new gymnasium floor from Heritage Floors. Whereas revised code 3313.46 requires the Bath Local School District and Board of Education to follow competitive bidding procedures for certain projects, and whereas the board's administrators have followed these procedures for the repair, enlargement, and or improvement of the floor of the high school gymnasium. And whereas pursuant to these procedures, Heritage Floors submitted the lowest responsive and responsible bid for the project. Now therefore be it resolved that the board accepts the bid submitted by Heritage Floors for the replacement project in the amount of $155,248.50 and an additional $11,285 for the demolition of the existing floor. Be it further resolved that the treasurer, superintendent, and board president are each authorized and directed to do all things necessary and consistent with this resolution to accomplish the project, included but not limited to negotiate and execute a contract between the board and Heritage Floors.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Mr. White, seconded by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion?
Yes, I think this requires a lot of discussion, conversation. So, I think this board has been very dedicated to maintaining the assets under our care. Our job is to care for the buildings and structures. Our job is to make good decisions related to things that will be a long-term continuing part of our school. That's why we've invested money in roofs, in the buildings, in the entryways. And the gym is one of those structures that the floor is basically, as I was told, one sanding past where it was supposed to be. If you watch the cheerleaders tumble down it, you can see all the dead spots where the floor bounces strangely. And we have a situation where if it is going to be a long-term part of our school, we need to keep that asset up. So I know the CAT team, and I thank the CAT team for the work they're continuing to do, but one of the things you get with the new school models is whether we build one building first or we build the second building, no school finds they have enough gym space. So typically they want to keep a gym, whether it be the middle school gym, the high school gym, so they have the spaces they need for the necessary practices and to give students athletic practices and games that they need. So we don't take lightly making this decision about whether we renovate this gym. And all I want to say is by renovating this gym, we're making it part of our long-term future. Now, that doesn't mean it necessarily has to be adjoined to a new building. It could be a standalone, like that one district down the road that has a field house. It could be something that we renovate and then abut a building to. And that's something the CAT team needs to help us decide as to what the grand layout of this campus looks like. I don't think what we're talking about impedes us from making many different choices in the future. But the timing to do the floor, and I'll save you the speech on item D, which is the next one. So here's how this works. If you look at the bleachers on the visitor side, they come out over the gym floor when they pull out. So if we're going to talk about a need to do something to renovate the bleachers and they have to come out, the logical time to attack the floor is while the bleachers are out and do both together. And we have a safety concern with the bleachers. If you're familiar with the bleachers, both on the home side at the top and the visitor side, you know, they're that very old style. You step up the seating sections. There's no stairway, there's no aisleway, there's no railing. And you know, one of our other jobs in addition to maintaining the asset is to restrict the liability of the taxpayers of Bath. You've heard me say many, many times, the district itself has no money. We have only the taxpayer fund. So our job is to make sure we don't get ourselves in a lawsuit situation where somebody's suing us for an unsafe situation. So, saying that, I advocate strongly that we pursue this floor investment and consequently the bleacher piece that goes with it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Phil. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Ernest,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Item D, the high school gymnasium bleacher replacement. Motion to approve the following resolution to accept the bid from Farnham Equipment Company. Whereas revised Revised Code 3313.46 requires Bath Local School District Board of Education to follow competitive bidding processes for certain projects. And whereas the board administrators have followed these procedures for the repair, enlargement, and/or improvement of the high school gymnasium bleachers, and whereas pursuant to those procedures, Farnham Equipment submitted the lowest responsive and responsible bid for the project. Now therefore be it resolved that the board accepts the bid submitted by Farnham Equipment Company for the project in the amount of $302,000. Be it further resolved that the treasurer, superintendent, and board president are each authorized and directed to do all things necessary and consistent with this resolution to accomplish the project, including but not limited to negotiate and execute a contract between the board and Farnham Equipment Company.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Ernest,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty.
Yes.
Item E is the OPSI MOU, approved the attached memorandum of understanding with OPSI local number 357 regarding wage schedule placement for new hires and compensatory overtime.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. White, seconded by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Ernest,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. White.
Yes. Item F is the facility rental fee schedule to approve the attached fee schedule for the use of school facilities.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Lighty. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Ernest,
Yes.
Item G, impractical to transport due to the small number of students attending the Allen County Educational Service Center Special Education Units and the Center for Autism and Dyslexia. Bath School Board declares it impractical to transport by conventional school bus. Transportation will be offered either through Black and White Cab Company, RTA, or a contract with parents/legal guardian at a rate of $3 per day. Students to be approved for transportation services are included in the attached list.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Lighty, seconded by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Ernest,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly.
Yes.
Item H, chaperones, volunteers, guest speakers. This list is included for liability insurance purposes. All volunteers, chaperones, and guest speakers have met the necessary requirements.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. White, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Ernest,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy.
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is report from administrators. I believe the transportation report is available out there for anyone who's interested. Next on the agenda is hearing of the public, items not on the agenda, and we don't have any blue cards today. Next is items from individual board members. Does anyone have anything?
I have a few.
Go ahead, Phil.
You have one, Mike?
You
Go
have-
Go ahead, Phil.
Okay. So a few things. So I think you've heard lots of people, and again, I thank the CAP team for their work on the buildings and the building plan, and we've talked about this funding issue from the state, and Joel, very eloquently talked about how funding hasn't gone up. And there's been $300 million in the school OFCC building fund per year since its inception back in the early 2000s. And obviously there's been some inflation. And the reason we're having this conversation about having to do a locally funded initiative, and because We want to improve our schools sooner than what the state will pay for the next school. The next school is 15 years out at the rate the state is funding schools. So that's why we're talking about this locally funded initiative. And one of the things that continues to be important to me and should be hopefully important to all of us is extending our influence beyond just this district. We have got to get the state legislature and we've got to get some state agencies moving. They have the money we need and they have the bureaucracy in the way of getting some of that money. And I've spent the last 2.5 years trying to work with the Ohio School Boards Association, the OSBAA, and the Office of Construction, which is the OFCC, and trying to even figure out how they do things. And they've admitted the system's broken and they're somewhat bogged down by the bureaucratic regulations. So I've been appointed to the Northwest Ohio OSBA Executive Committee. I will serve on their legislative committee, so that will give us a little more voice. And hopefully, part of what we will try to do is continue to work on many issues at the state related to school. And, public schools are a bit under attack by the state of Ohio and the state legislature. That's not a secret. And we want to defend against that. I'm a product of public education. I'm a strong believer in public education, and many of us are as well. Second thing is, we announced the OSBA has formed a work team for the OFCC. So there is a work group that has been formed that I'm going to be part of, and this is a group to help work with specifically the Office of Funding and Construction, the OFCC, to hopefully continue to work more closely with getting legislators on our side and to develop some pathways to get this funding maybe moving. What I cannot promise is that this is going to be fixed in the next 2 to 3 years. So that's why I strongly encourage everybody to keep thinking about the building projects we're doing. So I encourage you to do that. If we have any resolutions we want to send to the OSBA from a platform standpoint, I'd encourage the board to think about that and see if there's things we want to set up. And then the last thing, I know Mike's been waiting patiently, thank you.
No.
I made a statement at the last meeting about, expanding communication, and I think we have a really good website here at the school, if you go to bathwildcats.org, but you kind of got to drill down to find out where you're going. So I've taken on a bit of an endeavor, and I also find out, people try to contact me and whatnot. So I put some on the counter, but what I've started is an initiative with QR codes. So I printed a card that on the front of it has my Facebook and my X account, and on the back has quick links. So if you click it, it opens your email to send me an email. It has a link to where the agenda is on the board website, and it has a link to where the board video is posted, the library of those things. And I look to do more of this. Mr. Estes and I have had some conversations about, how we could link some of the other information we have. But hopefully that helps people find things that they want to find. So hopefully you find that helpful. And reach out and let's keep talking about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Real quick, I went to the Booster Club meeting last week. They seem to be adapting everything really well. Little concerned about all the payouts in the spring because of concession stands and all that, but I think Sean's got it under control.
Can I just say something? Sure. So I just wanted to thank my fellow board members for organizing the leadership roles and the committee appointments at last month's meeting. I had surgery and I'm recovering well, and looking forward to the district's continued success this year. And I just wanted to congratulate and show my support for Mrs. Ernest and Mr. Leidy in their new appointments as president and vice president. I didn't get to say that because I wasn't here, so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so we did get a blue card, so I'm gonna backtrack and allow you to speak, so you can go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So my name is Anita Owsley. I have a
graduated in 2012. So, very much love the school district, have nothing bad to say about it. But I recently did have something happen that I felt I disagreed with. Don't really have the level of clarification I think that I was looking for when I initially sent an email to the elementary principal. And the concern I have in particular is a letter that I had received regarding a threat for a Saturday school for my son who's in 5th grade. And the reason why he got a letter, which was obviously a template with his name inserted into it, so I know he's not the only one who received this letter. But I do know that the reason he did receive it is because he wasn't completing his schoolwork. And by complete, I mean the answers to his homework were entered on Schoology. So due to that, it's being considered as incomplete, whereas I disagree because he completed it on paper, but due to it not, and I understand requirements, teachers' requirements, I understand how they manage a classroom, I totally understand that. However, what I disagree with is he completed the work on paper, it wasn't put on Schoology, therefore it's being considered incomplete, and I'm just confused. I'm not sure, like, is it Bath School's policy to police whether my child does homework? And if he doesn't do homework, he gets a Saturday school? And if he's not going to Saturday school, if he's not, say we're not able to take him, or he misses, or we forget, then he gets suspended for 3 days, and this was all outlined in the letter. How is that fair? He's a student with A's and B's, but because he's missing some homework, and it's only missing because it's not entered into Schoology, he gets a letter threatening a Saturday school. I fundamentally disagree with that. I don't think it's fair. I think that there would have been a better way to address this. I think that if it was a bigger concern, I think maybe the teacher could have reached out to me and said, hey, have a talk with your son, you give him time, he's not doing it. I didn't get that luxury. I just got a letter in the mail saying he's not putting it on Schoology, it's incomplete. If he keeps it up, he's gonna get a Saturday school, and he's a good student. Another concern I have is just with Schoology in general. I think that, I graduated in 2012, like, we weren't really, really into all this online stuff. I think that it requires, like, a balance, right? And I think that maybe it's, like, too much online stuff. I'm not really sure. I would really like to understand better how Schoology is really helping the students in the classroom. Like, why is it so important that my child enters his homework on Schoology that it can lead him to having a Saturday school if he doesn't do it? I would really like to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll look into it, somebody will get back with you.
Okay, next on the agenda is executive session. I don't believe that we have a reason to go into executive session, so, next on the agenda is adjournment. Next regular board meeting is Tuesday, March 18th, at 7 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Mrs. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Ernest?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Lighty?
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion? So when you do the slide thing up there, when you watch it on the video, you can't see or read it at all.
The what?
If you I
Slides.
missed January reading, so when I watched it, like he goes through his